advise that it will be recorded, so we are going to be able to share this with everyone who's here, and also registrants who weren't able to make it as well. So definitely one we can share across groups and share with any team members who weren't able to make it today. So moving on, just wanted to move to a quick agenda. First off, just going to introduce myself, introduce the company, just talk a little bit about what our background is and kind of what brings us here today. And then we're going to go through 6 case studies. So we've tried to cast a really broad net, looking at a variety of different areas of marketing automation and some very cool case studies. Tried not to have too much overlap between any of the case studies. So like I said, we're just trying to cast a broad net, hopefully give you some ideas, some things that maybe you weren't sensitive to or things that weren't quite on your radar as potential ideas. We're also going to do questions halfway through the case studies, and then at the end of the case studies, in case you guys have any questions for me or anything that's kind of prompted on your side. And then at the end of the presentation, we're going to open the floor, and if there's any cool case studies that you folks would like to share, we'll have time for a couple of those at the end, and just do a little bit of sharing on that front. So moving on, who am I and why do I think I'm qualified to speak about this? So as I said, my name's Jordan Hellyer and I'm the president of Marketing Automation Canada. We're an 11-year-old company, started me all by my lonesome, doing all the good entrepreneurial stuff, making the desks, taking out the garbage, doing all the accounting, things like that. We've been fortunate enough to grow into a 25-person shop today. My background prior to starting the company was in digital advertising. So I worked at a number of kind of conventional ad agencies specialized in both direct mail, but also their digital channels, but wanted to do the classic entrepreneurial thing and start my own company from there. One interesting thing about me is I was named as one of the top 4 advertising and communication professionals in Canada by Notable.ca. Also, for the sake of this presentation, just before C19 hit, I got this fancy new headshot done. I found that in the 11 years of running the company, I've needed to change my headshots a few times because, the stress of running a company and things like that adds up a little bit on you. If you don't believe me, I'll show you my headshot from 11 years ago when I did start the company, which is right here. And these folks who did my headshots actually were nice enough to give me a 11 years from now headshot so that I could see what I'll look like with 11 more years of running the company, which looks a little bit like that, unfortunately. So moving on to talking a little bit more about Marketing Automation Canada, again, just to kind of set the stage for the work we do and why we think these are really interesting case studies based on the work we've been doing. When I started the company, we were very focused on linear email marketing, batch and blast. You got a list, you got an email, send it out. And about 6 or 7 years ago, we really transitioned to marketing automation and pivoted the company to really focus in on that space. And of course, we've been growing ever since, and that's been our primary focus since then. In terms of where we plug into the marketing automation journey, we work with clients through the entire process, soup to nuts. So marketing automation strategy, execution, data management, reporting. We also have content services in-house, so we do design and coding. So we're able to do everything. And in terms of our examples today, we wanted to look at kind of everything, different areas we've touched and different areas that might be of interest to the audience today. I also just wanted to share the platforms we service. We service all the major platforms. We also work in Salesforce CRM, so just a little bit of background on that. So to level set in terms of the webinar today, today's webinar is about creating unique, engaging experiences that add value to the evolved buyer's journey, with marketing automation acting as a catalyst and making it all happen. So, things like one-off emails, things like simple nurture campaigns, those are all awesome. And I think those are table stakes, very important with marketing automation. But what we want to talk about today are, the cases that really take it to the next level, that use marketing automation tools in a way you wouldn't expect, that adds value for the client or adds value for the customer. Things that just might be a little bit, as we said in the name of the presentation, off the beaten path. I mentioned that we work in a number of platforms. The case studies today, they were built in a specific platform, but we've selected the case studies today with an eye towards being agnostic towards platform. Some of the case studies, you're not going to be able to do everything if you're not on that native case study, but you should be able to do 70 to 80% of what we're recommending in any case. And the key thing to us more is the strategy, the ideology, the thinking that goes into these points and kind of how they're executed. So we thought either way, and regardless of the platform you do find yourself on, that this would be a helpful overview for everyone on here. In terms of the outcomes for you, the audience, definitely looking for folks to come away with some fresh ideas and insights into their marketing automation usage. Hopefully will spark some fresh ideas, if not necessarily exactly what we're showing here. Maybe it prompts further creative ideas with you, and hopefully has a positive, virtuous cycle from there. Like I said, just a quick cover off of the housekeeping rules, which we talked about, or which we had as the screen when everyone was coming in. So, we're going to do the case studies, but we also have a question period, both after the third one and then at the end of the case studies. So if you have any questions, feel free to just shoot them over in the question and answer tab, which you'll see in Zoom there. And we will cover those in the break, just to kind of keep the flow of things. Or if it's a specific direct question on a specific item for you, some of my administrators on the call today may just reach out directly to chat through it with you as well. Um, I also mentioned that we're really interested in any cool usages that you feel like sharing. So certainly as we're moving forward, if you do want to share those, feel free to chat those over to us as we're going through the presentation. And then at the end, we will call on a couple of examples based on how time permits. In that case, you would be unmuted and we could just kind of chat a little bit more about that sample. As I said, because of time restrictions, we may not be able to get to every question. We may not be able to get to every case study. So if there are any items you'd like to chat further with us about, or just want to pick our brain, wonder how one item would translate to your marketing automation platform, feel free to contact us at the email that we sent the confirmation to. We also are very accessible at the contact us here. So yeah, we're easy to get a hold of and easy to find, and that's certainly the idea. So moving right into the case studies. So the first challenge and the first case study we wanted to talk about here was constructing a self-managing program for a university that provides course material, notifications, and calendar events to students doing online courses. So for this case study, we do quite a lot of work in the education space using marketing automation for our education clients. And of course, that makes sense because marketing automation and education are such a perfect fit, right? The student journey is very defined through, education, through to making a decision, your application, kind of keeping it sold once you've made an application, following up after events are done, things like that. It has a very clear platform, and so education, obviously, as I said, is a very organic fit. But what I thought was really cool about this case study is that it's not really a marketing case study. It's not the usual nurture campaigns that you'd have for a university, but it's actually kind of delivering a course once you've actually signed up at the university. So in this particular case, what's really cool is that marketing automation owns the entire journey versus usually they kind of move through marketing, and then once you've converted a lead, you move on to whatever it is you're delivering in a separate platform or a separate area. But in this one, basically it's an online program, and the online program was entirely delivered through marketing automation. And what's cool is that the online program uses all of the power of marketing automation to really engage with the lead in a really interesting way. So, it does what you'd expect an online course to do. It sends out, assignment reminders, course content, testing module, things like that. But it also can shift up and down based on engagement. So if it's seeing that you're getting your modules completed, if you're moving through your emails at a good clip, it can get more aggressive in kind of delivering that to you. If it finds you're not engaging, if you haven't been opening, it can send reminders, it can move on to different tracks. Of course, it can also segment based on what program you're doing. If there's like different versions of your program, it can have those segmentations in place and things like that. So so like I said, things like this can be done, but they're not usually done in marketing automation. And what we thought was so cool about this is that you can literally start the journey of the potential customer at the first stage and then move all the way to the very end of the presentation as well. To the very end of the customer journey, all in a complete loop within marketing automation, which I thought was a very cool example. For the next two examples, they're both content-oriented examples. So, the content, obviously, it's an expected use case of marketing automation, but what we really wanted to focus on here were really cool use cases of content and kind of next level usages of content. And like I said, maybe what we're describing could be achieved in some third-party integration and things like that. But what's really cool about these is that they're all done right in the tool, in a very straightforward manner, without needing any third-party integrations or plugins or anything like that. So in this particular case, the challenge was developing a single landing page for 100 plus client accounts, each with custom design attributes. So what the client had said to us is that, look, we have basically 100 target accounts. We don't have a broad customer base. We know that these target accounts are exactly who we want to be speaking to. And it's an account-based strategy. So, we could be talking with 20, 30, 40 people at each of these companies. But as I said, the list is 100 companies long. And so in this particular case, what we did is we had one single URL, one single landing page, but we had it fully customized for each of the 100 accounts, and not just customized in sort of an arbitrary way, but customized in a really specific way designed to really engage the specific account. So looking at the samples here, you can see here, this is kind of the generic version, right? You have the client name, which we've made anonymous just for the sake of anonymity, the content, the form, and things like that. But if you came in and you were IT Bank, what happens is, even though it's the same URL, based on your cookie, the entire landing page completely shifts in its content. So now the color scheme has changed to be your color scheme. It has the logo of your company. It has content that's specifically tailored to you. The form has options that are specifically tailored to your company. And it does that all organically without needing anything further. In terms of sort of like the technical setup of this, I mean, it's a little bit intensive. What we did here is we use segments. So basically, we had 100 versions of the landing page that were pulled up dynamically. And as I said, we had to kind of find the logos, we had to find the color schemes and things like that. There were a few manual elements that kind of went into doing this to make it look organic to the final client. But what I think the real success story with this example is that the engagement rates from the accounts that they were targeting were something like 4 to 5 times what they normally saw in their usual landing pages and things like that, to the point where we actually got a lot of feedback from clients saying, hey, I loved that this had our logo. It seemed like you really put in the time. I loved that the case studies were, directly relevant to us. And, even though people know that there's not a human literally sitting there and targeting it towards you, I think clients really respect the fact that you've spent the extra time to speak directly to them rather than kind of driving them to something a little bit more generic. And yeah, certainly in this case, the kind of longer setup time of finding those logos and things like that led to a really strong conversion on the back end of, really being able to move that account-based strategy forward. So I thought that was a really cool one. Moving on to case study number 3. So as I said, this is our second of two kind of content type case studies. And while the last one was a landing page, this one is fully based on email. But what's cool about this is, though, personalization is really the goal with this email, the personalization here is done in a completely different way, in a fairly technical way, wildly different from what the landing page earlier did. So the challenge here was creating an intricate email design that allows usage of relevant content stored in opportunities and custom objects, and entering it dynamically into emails for lead nurturing. So what that means in practicality is that in case study number 2, we had, as I said, a landing page that had 100 segments directed at 100 different accounts. In this email, there are so many variables that there's no way of sort of controlling the segmentation of it. Basically, everyone's going to have a completely different experience, and it comes entirely out of your Salesforce record. So what we needed to do here is we needed to have logic in place that basically could read your Salesforce record, aggregate that information, and then show it on the email in a way that's content friendly. Because, for instance, if you're looking here, you can see when that we have custom dates and times for the registration, but those dates and times would be different, and they would exist in the CRM only as the date and only as the time. So you still need something that can turn it into content that actually, is positive in a with a customer and doesn't just isn't just CRM ease. So in this specific example, what we did is we built out the template and we used what's called velocity scripting. So basically, we created fallback rules looking at the different items within the CRM data, and if they had them, then displaying certain items within the email, and then adding that additional layer of making it kind of content focused and friendly in that case. So yeah, so what happened in this case is an email that could have had thousands of variables and was just so complex it never could have been kind of actively thought out, is able to have all those variables stored using a bit of velocity. So basically this is one email, one bit of velocity scripting, and sent out, and as long as the data within Salesforce is accurate, it's going out in a completely tailored way for the customer. So I think in this case, just a really cool usage of logic, a really cool, good way of drawing what's in a CRM and bringing it into a positive kind of customer-facing version of what we have. I should say a student-facing version because this was actually built for another of our universities here in Canada, and yeah, using content in a really interesting way. So I just want to pause here for any open questions. Like I said, we can definitely do a deeper dive of questions when we're at the end of the case studies, but just wanted to see if there were any kind of pressing ones as we're moving forward. I'm joined as one of my panelists by Kate, who's one of our most senior marketing automation architects here at the company. So you'll be hearing her voice a little bit through these periods. So Kate, did we have any questions that we wanted to tackle before moving on here?
No questions yet. So just a reminder, you can submit questions using the Q&A button at the bottom, and we'll go over the questions again at the end of the presentation.
Perfect. Sounds good. Alrighty, moving forward then. So moving on to case study number 4. So this one, again, we were trying to cast a broad net and really wanted to look at a few areas that, we thought people would be pretty interested in. So in this case, form strategy is one that I'm sure you guys have all dealt with, right? Should you be more marketing side? Should you be more marketing automation side, marketing ops side? Getting forms, is so powerful within a marketing side item, but it's so difficult to get information. And I'm sure you as a consumer, whenever you're asked to give information on a form, you don't want to do it, right? Like, even if you have name or email, you probably aren't particularly interested in sharing that. But as we know for marketers, and particularly within marketing automation, the more information we have, the more powerful the end result is, the more we can kind of do with it, right? So there's always kind of this balance between the tension of people hating to fill out forms and marketing automation people loving when people fill out forms, because then we can just have such a better use of marketing automation in that case. So the challenge here was splitting up long forms into multiple steps to collect detailed prospect information without a third-party integration. So like I said, what we're describing here can be done a few different ways. You can have a form that kind of blocks out and would extend out through the page, but you'd probably have to do that programmatically. You can also have programmatic solutions to kind of show different fields and things like that. But what we really wanted to do here is we wanted to use all of the power of marketing automation, and as I said, not use any third-party plugins. Plus, it was important for us that our client, who isn't, wouldn't have coding skills, can still update it, because actually it's very important to them that the fields change, that they add additional options, and that they can all do that visually within marketing automation. So the solution we came up with here is basically what we created are a number of uh, different um, uh, a number of different forms that kind of go one after the other. So it's not one continuous form, it's a variety of different forms, and they're all done in marketing automation. So basically the idea is that you fill out the first option, you get your email, and the email is the key thing, because that's the thing that it tags the league, and now we have a cookie and we can kind of follow them through. And then we can move into these other options, like your program of choice, like your next point, your business analytics, when you'd like to be doing it, that type of thing. And we replace the submit form on the button with the next button. So yeah, so basically, as we move through, we're able to track each movement. Each movement is a marketing automation form, and it all happens within this one area. So you never have to lose your content. You don't have to push it down based on a form. And like I said, the client can fully edit it on their side without needing to mess with code or anything like that. So like I said, it's kind of a creative way of answering kind of a specific marketing need. And I think what's really neat about this specific usage is that if we lose people at some point in the form, if they're all doing one form, we lose them, right? Like if you do the first four fields and then suddenly four more fields appear, and you're like, I don't want to fill this out, right? We've lost you because you haven't hit submit yet. But in this case, with each chunk, you're hitting submit. So after program of choice, if you hit that and then you don't finish your next step here, 3A, we know in marketing automation that that's where you stopped. So if we want to, we can send you an email and say, hey, we just wanted to confirm if you want to start in August 2020 or December 2020. They click the button and we can kind of continue them on moving from there. Alternatively, we can focus in on just re-engaging them, bringing back to the form, something like that. So there's a variety of strengths to this approach. The other nice thing is if you're using a third-party integration, you wouldn't get the cookie for marketing automation. So in this case, we have them cookied. We can use all the power of marketing automation, and we can kind of move them through the forms in sort of a straightforward manner. So yeah, so moving along to case study number 5. So for this one, the challenge was developing an all-comprehensive alert center to track and notify on high-value actions and errors occurring in the system. So at Marketing Automation Canada, we do a ton of alert centers. I would say probably all of our clients have some version of an alert center in place. And usually that's a fairly straightforward item. Usually that has a pretty straightforward need, which would be, developing lead processing, developing MQL processing. Maybe it has a round robin to get to the right salespeople. Maybe it's set up by territory or geography to set up to them. But usually it's all about the lead routing, right? This person filled out the form, talk with them, moving on from there. But a challenge that we've seen with clients, and this has happened in every 11 year of me running the company, is the thing with marketing automation, with CRMs, is that they're so complex. There's lots of people in them on any given day, and you're not necessarily checking every single program every single day. And so what can happen is that someone makes an error and just turns off a lead scoring program, or someone misunderstands what a program is doing and turns it off, or changes the value, but the changing of value ends up messing up the round robin or something like that. So, what has happened is that, these things will happen and no one will notice for months, but then someone will notice and notice that, oh shoot, there were 30 MQLs that got missed because someone accidentally turned on this field or something like that. And so, what we try to protect against is we try to protect against those kind of weird things that you can't really anticipate, that with a lot of people, sometimes someone will just go rogue and accidentally do this type of thing. But the key thing is detecting the problem early, right? If you can detect it on the first day, then it sucks, but at least you've figured out the problem, life is back to normal, you haven't missed any MQLs. But when you find it months later, that's when the real challenge is. So in this particular alert center, as I said, it does MQL processing and all the things you'd expect. But what we also built in was an infrastructure to identify, track, and alert key stakeholders when alerts and failures occurred within the tool. So for instance, if the reCAPTCHA failed, if there's a 404 error, if there's hard bounces, scoring model issues, webinar registration errors, duplicate leads, things like that. Any of those things are normal things that can happen within a marketing automation platform. Hard bounces can happen, right? The email is wrong, it's going to bounce. But the key thing is, if it happens a lot, that's when you need to be worried. For instance, with hard bounces, that could mean that you're in a spam trap you weren't expecting, or something for duplicate leads. Maybe there's some data, someone on the team isn't following the right data practices, so now you're duplicating a lot of the leads. Maybe you're double scoring them. These are all things you don't know because no one person tends to know everything that's happening. But if you can at least have an alert to let you know that some issues are happening, then that will be a prompt that now's the time to start digging into that. And like I said, the key thing is figuring out something on stay on step one rather than step 100 or days later, right? In this specific example, another thing that we had done is that we integrated Marketo with Slack, and we sent notifications to the team on the MQL, the marketing qualified leads, but also if someone visited a pricing page or if a lead had not been contacted in 30 days, those types of things. And some of the reason was that the sales team were just getting inundated with emails, right? And eventually you start to kind of tune out your 50th form fill email. But the nice thing about Slack is you're getting kind of real-time analytics, and you're speaking to people maybe where they prefer to be spoken to. So if you're in an active lead and someone has gone quiet on you, and then 2 weeks later now they're suddenly visiting the pricing page, you can know that in real time. And though you'd look a little bit creepy, the salesperson could literally pick up the phone and say, hey, I just wanted to chat about our conversations we were having 2 weeks ago, restart those conversations, and that that's a relevant thing. So yeah, so like I said, alert centers, common usage, but I think what's really cool about this one is all the different safety features that were kind of built into it. And the idea is that, yes, we're identifying good leads for sales, but we're also identifying potential problems that could fly under the surface if, they weren't being flagged and, action wasn't being taken on things. So moving to our final case study before we switch back into questions. The challenge here was to set up an ABM campaign, account-based marketing campaign, that combined traditional marketing like direct mail and digital marketing tactics. So as I mentioned, I started my career in direct mail. So I did a lot of digital, and I definitely kind of transitioned to that when I was working in ad agencies. But a lot of the work I did were, packages and cool things that you could send to people and that type of thing. And this particular case study was one we did for a client in the financial space. And basically, they were looking in their lead generation for a way to break through. Sales calls, were sometimes just not getting returned, emails, landing pages. They got some engagement, but they were having trouble just kind of getting people to actually connect with them. So, they were trying to really kind of break through, and kind of similar to the landing page example I mentioned, where, you're drawn to lots of landing pages, right? You're brought to them all the time. But when suddenly it shifts to your color scheme has your logo, then you really kind of see an attention to quality and something that really kind of cuts through the haze of like all the marketing that's happening to you. I think in this specific case, the idea was, how do we cut through that haze as well, right? And the solution that we reached was, well, we should send some interesting direct mail pieces, because people aren't used to getting that much in terms of actual physical stuff. And if you can kind of break through with physical things, that's awesome. But the thing is, like, you don't want to just be blindly sending physical things, because they're a little bit more expensive, right? Like an email costs what you pay for your marketing automation tool, and that's about it. But a physical thing, you got to build the thing, you got to figure it out, procure it, get it shipped out. So it's a little bit more work. But what if you can kind of identify where that expenditure would be best used, and really kind of target it through that way? So that's what we did in this case. So what we did is we integrated the marketing automation platform that this client was using with a direct mail platform called PFL. And then based on the actions in the nurture campaign, at certain touch points, we would have the kind of physical direct mail piece click in, and that would go ahead and kind of send through. And we can actually still customize the direct mail piece based on your job title, your vertical, different things like that. So we still have like the power of marketing automation. We can still get kind of fancy with what we're doing. It's just now it's actually a real thing you've got, right? Versus just kind of a another digital asset. And what's really cool about this example is, the other thing with digital and offline cadences is sometimes it's hard to figure out what's going on offline, right? With digital, we have full analytics. We know if you've clicked, we know where you are, we know if you're on the web page, that type of thing. But we lose you if we're sending you something, because we know if you looked at it, we know generally if it's gotten to you, but I don't know, we don't know if you've come back to the landing page. So with these items, with the integration of PFL, you're able to see when it's been delivered. So at least we know that it has gotten to you, and we know that you've now seen it. And that that feeds back into marketing automation. So we can go ahead and have further things happen because you've taken that action. But we also, within the pieces, would have things like a personalized URL that's, exclusively yours. So we know that you specifically have come back if you're a high value target, or a strong call to action so that you come back to our landing page that, like in the earlier example, maybe it's super customized to you to kind of continue that journey or something along those lines. So in kind of how that happens in real life, so like I said, what happens is we have kind of a regular sort of content nurture strategy. We send out some editorial content, we send out an expert guide, kind of building a relationship, trying to move things along. But we look at the engagement metrics through those. If you're clicking a lot, if you're opening our emails, if you seem really engaged, or you have other items like you've been going to the website, things like that, well, now we've identified you as a high value target. And in that case, then that you're a good person to send our direct mail swag to, right? So in this case, you can see, okay, well, we've now done sort of a lead scoring layer here, and based on people we think are of interest, we went ahead and with the integration had some direct mail, physical mail kind of sent to them, in this case kind of a swag item that they could just have. And when we saw that it had been delivered, the delivery filter triggers the salesperson to give them a call. So what this happens in real life is basically you get delivered this thing on day one. On day two, or even later on day one, the salesperson reaches out and says, hey, I saw you got our thing, I hope you liked it, I'd just love to talk. And suddenly people that we weren't able to get a hold of, suddenly people who weren't returning our phone calls are a lot more expressive in returning our phone calls, and or at least want to talk with us because, hey, we got this cool thing, and we've kind of broken through the haze. And the nice thing is, like, we can then personalize it. If you have had a sales call, you can go into one group. If we weren't able to connect with you on sales still, we can put you back into a nurture strategy and have you kind of keep clicking around on the nurture side of things. And similarly, if you did engage at a later point in the nurture, we can restart you on a physical thing, perhaps an e-gift card or something along those lines. And again, when that's delivered, we can go ahead and have an actual sales call and things like that. So to me, this will sound a lot like a regular nurture strategy. It has all the kind of variables that we expect. It has the segmentation we suspect. But what's cool is we can kind of break through the computer screen, right? Rather than using our emails and landing pages, which work great, and some sales support, we're getting a physical thing and literally dropping it off right beside the person, and now they've got a shirt. And now they're probably more interested in speaking to us and engaging with us a little bit more. So yeah, really interesting use of kind of offline tactics, which I thought was a really cool item. Before we get into the second round of questions, I also just wanted to talk a little bit more about the company. So in case you are sort of like really intrigued by some of these points, or you just like to discuss further, or you need help internally, anything like that, I just wanted to let you know that we do have like kind of a different model than many of our competition. We don't require mandatory minimums, monthly retainers, anything like that. We just bill by the hour. If you need 2 hours of support, great. If you need 5 hours of support, great. Totally cool on our side. We also are able to do fixed rate projects for fixed rate scopes, and our fixed rate project would never exceed. So that's just kind of what it's going to cost, and that's that. We also have all our staff in Toronto. Usually I say in office. Obviously we are not in office right now, but we are all in Toronto, so we don't do any offshoring or outsourcing. And I think the other cool thing is that we do hook our folks up with the marketing automation person directly, and that's an ongoing relationship. So you're not kind of like going through tickets, you're not going through different people that you're working with. It's always one person, so they get to know you, they know their business, your business. They're kind of working to achieve your goals together, and I think that's a kind of a really interesting thing. I just wanted to share that in case anything coming out of here you wanted to kind of dive in more deeply with us. As I said, in terms of what we support marketing automation pretty much start to finish, soup to nuts. We do data work, we do content design and execution, nurture strategies. We do lots of full platform implementations. We do a lot of integrations, marketing automation with an external service. And like I said, a lot of our clients will have internal teams, things like that. They might need bandwidth support or just another set of eyes. So we do a lot of system audits, consulting with internal teams, things like that. As I said, we're super fluid. We really work with our clients exactly in the way that they'd like to be worked with. with, and we don't come with any way that we sort of demand to work, essentially. So yeah, so that's us. So yeah, moving back into the questions portion. Kate, any questions that we were going to tackle here?
Yes, we have a few now. So the first question is regarding the multi-step form case study. So the question was, what level of form drop-off rate, so percent of people who didn't completely fill out the form, did we see with the multi-step form case
Yeah,
study?
it was much improved in the case study. In the case study that we showed, I'm not sure I would have comparative metrics offhand, but it would have been to a factor of 2 or to a factor of 3 from what we normally saw. And I think the nice thing is it's kind of like one of those, just one more thing type of things, right? A bit like Matlock or whatever, where you're kind of like, oh well, all right, I've already filled out all this thing, so I guess I'll just do this one thing, and then you get one more thing and you're like, oh, all right, I'll just do the one more thing. And yeah, and I think, as I said, the nice thing about doing this versus one that kind of folds down is that, if you can just get their email, you've got their email, right? That's the minimum you want, and everything else beyond that is kind of gravy. So I think what's exciting about this example is that as you kind of build through it, the more information you get, the stronger we are, the more segmentation and targeting we can use. But you have everything you need at the kind of first step too. So yeah, so yeah, the short answer is definitely we saw a large increase in conversion. I can check the numbers and kind of get back with something a little bit more quantitative, but it definitely makes a big difference. And like I said, I think the bite-sized chunks are kind of the key point there, and never kind of exposing someone too deeply to any point there.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add a comment to that too. So one of the benefits of that setup is even if someone does fall off, let's say it's a 5-part form and they fall off at form 3, at least they've submitted forms 1 through 3, right? So you have that now in your database, and you can, next time they come back, pick up at the 4th form, so they're not having to kind of resubmit everything. So that can be really helpful from a user experience, of course, and also it's helpful from a targeting perspective, because now you have all this data, whereas with a typical Marketo form, if they didn't submit the form, you would just lose that information, right? They would have to start all over again if they came back, say, a couple days later. The
Yeah.
next question, sorry, did you have another comment?
No, I was going to say exactly. It's a positive user experience for the customer, but then us as marketers, it's great because we're just kind of constantly building more information and not, frustrating the customer or the client.
Great. The next question was, which of these case studies would we be able to apply to a student message board type scenario?
I think there's definitely lots of good usages for a message board type of scenario. Like definitely, I think the first case study of having kind of the online delivery and things like that would be doable. I think we'd probably have to dive a little bit more deeply into, I think there'd be a few ways to tackle it. I think we'd need to understand the current market, the current tech stack and things like that before giving a bit better insight. But I think it'd definitely be doable, and we've kind of done a few different types of approaches like that in the past. So yeah, I'm not sure I have a stronger answer right off the bat, but just to say that I definitely think it would be a use case that we could use, and kind of similar to what we're talking about here, that it would be a point where you're off-roading for marketing automation usage, but I think still, able to do it without a third-party integration. So.
Great. The next question is about the direct marketing piece. So the question was, did we test using offline swag versus online incentive?
That's really an interesting point. We didn't do like a direct A/B test, and now that you say that, I'd really like to. I think that'd be very interesting. What we have done is we have like worked with offline incentives. Like some of them are kind of like cool things, like a shirt or a pen or things like that, that just kind of are like building, building a relationship. But others are kind of have a bit more of a direct thing. They have a code for the download, or they have e-gift card, or they're more of a like kind of a physical gift. So we've definitely experimented with that, and we found that like based on context is where they work best, right? Like if something's a little bit more transactional, sometimes those like kind of monetary incentives can really help. But if you're kind of looking for a bigger deal, if you're looking for more relationship building, in a weird way, that's where the swag helps. Like I said, we all have swag, right? It's just a thing, but it is like something people like, right? Like I have pretty much exclusively branded pens, from clients and people I do business with. So it is an effective way. But yeah, we've never done sort of like a straight up A/B test of an online incentive versus an offline swag piece, but it's a great idea, and certainly I'd love to do it because I'd be really interested in how they stack up against each other. So.
Thank you. And one of our senior Marketo specialists had a comment he wanted to say as well. So I'll let Josh talk for a second.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. And hi, Nish. Nice to meet you. I just wanted to chime in and mention that I really like where your head's at with that question, and that the idea of sending this direct mail can go far beyond the traditional swag, right? And you can look at direct comparisons like white papers and case studies. Like how do the downloads and opens there perform with those that are being received in person? And it sort of gives you this like extra sort of layer of getting the client really interested, because part of direct mail is just that it's really an art unto itself. And getting the open rate like you would sort of with an email, that challenge presents itself as well with the direct mail. But what you're able to do is just like make sure that what you're sending is a very high quality sort of product, and try to make it interesting and exciting for the person who's opening it, right? So even if you're just someone's just requested a white paper case study, send something else along with it. Put a little bit extra spend onto the envelope or the packaging so that it looks really nice, high quality. Get some gloss on there, maybe just to set yourself aside and say like, hey, this is a really valuable piece of material that you've requested. Even though it's available on the web for free, it's going to get that message across much better than just like a manila envelope that has a little label on the front. So that's sort of just a little bit of more advice there. And as a last point, that value that you're presenting is going to be apparent, and it's going to hang around with the client, right? It's like that piece of mail is going to sit on their desk for as long as the quality or the perceived quality that you presented sort of provides. So just some food for thought there.
For sure.
Thanks, Josh. Great comments. Our next question is again about the multi-step form. So the question is, do you find that the multi-step form setup works better than using progressive profiling on Marketo forms?
So what we really like about the multi-step that we're discussing here is that we like the kind of individual steps of it. So, progressive profiling we've worked with quite extensively, and we found that that works well, and it kind of achieves kind of a similar type of goal, right? Because you're kind of moving through the different steps as you kind of move through. But I think with progressive profiling, you kind of set up an entire kind of rule base, and you just kind of slowly move your way through, and you just have kind of rules, and it kind of moves forward. But what I think is cool about this specific usage is that you can kind of watch people during the process in this case, and you're able to kind of intercept and kind of move them forward in a way that maybe progressive profiling can't necessarily do. But I think both kind of have the same sort of strategic outcome, which is trying to have a better user experience of filling out forms. I think there's just kind of like different tools in the toolbox essentially. But yeah, I think certainly progressive profiling has good uses as well.
Yeah, I guess to add my own comments, progressive profiling is a bit of a slower game, right? So the concept is every time someone revisits, you'll get a couple of new fields to fill out. So typically they have to visit a couple times in order to fill out those forms, right? And for you to gather that information. So that could take you a couple weeks, couple months. So it's just a great the benefit of the multi-step form is that in the case of like more of an application or a survey, you can collect all that information in a more succinct time frame. But thank you, that was a great question. The next question, so regarding the self-managing nurture case study, is that if there is a change in the course schedule, such as a class being canceled, how does this impact the nurture assets and cadence?
So that particular program is built in Marketo, and what's great about Marketo is that Marketo is really good about organically plugging information in and out of a nurture sequence and updating content and things like that in a really organic way. So you don't have to stop something, restart it. You don't have to push live a new version of what the nurture is. It just happens really organically. So in that particular case, yeah, the nice thing is, if you made 6 primary emails that delivered the content, and suddenly halfway through you need to change up the content, you're able to do that in an organic way without having to restart anyone or have them start off in a different sequence or anything like that. One challenge is like if 3 emails have gone out and suddenly a course content point is changed, or a download is wrong and you want to correct the earlier emails. I mean, obviously we can do that in real time, but the problem is people have gotten those first 3 emails. So in those cases, usually what we'll do is we'll just have an email kind of existing outside of the cadence that we've created for this online course, so that we're not creating something permanent, but we just have sort of like a one-off correction that we can identify everyone who's kind of gone through those first 3 emails, send that along to them, and and then just kind of have like the course move on. And of course, organically, we just change them in the first 3, so all new people who get those first 3 emails would see the right content. So yeah, it's certainly possible. And like I said, in the specific usage, because it's in Marketo, it's really fluid and quite easy to do. So that's a positive thing. Exactly to your point. The only thing is like major corrections, but in that case, usually we just kind of can pull it out of the flow. So.
Thanks. The next question, sorry, we have a lot and we only have 10 minutes left, so maybe we'll just do 1 or 2 more. But what are the benefits of setting up a multi-step form on your marketing automation system over an integration with an outsider platform like SurveyMonkey?
Yeah, so like a SurveyMonkey would definitely do something kind of like what we're describing here. You could have logic, you could, based on answers, have it, jump into different, trees of logic and things like that. But I think the benefit of this here is, one, that it is native to marketing automation. So the idea is that if you fill out the form, at least you have the cookie, we can start tracking you and things like that. And you don't need an integration with SurveyMonkey and things like that to do it. But the nice thing is that like all the logic, you're really not losing anything by not using a third party, right? Like all the branching logic you could do in a SurveyMonkey, you could also do in Marketo in the way that we're describing here. Yeah, so I think the main benefit would be it's all in one platform. Your client, or the person who owns the instance, can make updates in real time without needing to find their SurveyMonkey person and then also their marketing automation person. Yeah, and also, as I said, you're not reliant on an external platform. It's all something you could do within the tool that you already have. So.
Great. The last question is regarding the Alert Center. So the question is, we currently use Marketo and Salesforce. Which platform would you recommend the Alert Center would be created in?
So the sample I used was built in the marketing automation platform. So all of the all of the alerts obviously came out of there, but also the round robins for the salespeople, the geography, setting things by geography, all came from there. In this specific case, it was important that it all came from marketing automation, because marketing automation is the one that would notice, the 404 errors, the bouncing, the duplicate, the data issues, that type of thing. So it was very important in this case. What I think, the challenge we've seen is, like, certainly Salesforce can do round robins. They can do, setting sales by geography, right? Marketing automation or CRM can do that. And from our perspective, usually we try to have kind of market automation own marketing processes and CRM own sales processes, just to kind of keep them separated out from each other. But I think we don't have a strong preference. I think it would have to do with what the best the best practices internally were, what had been built before, kind of what their internal preferences are. Where we have seen problems happen is when there is not a clear demarcation of who owns what, and that's where challenges run, because maybe half of the grooming is done in marketing automation automation and half is done in CRM. And maybe the CRM person is not the marketing automation person, and they tend to have the logic that you're building are having flows or conflicts or things that aren't entirely clear to folks. So that's where the challenge is. So yeah, I think in this particular case, because of the complexity of it, it was important that it all be built in the marketing automation tool and that everything be owned there. But that's not necessarily true of just sort of any of our alert centers. As I said, we don't have a strong preference either way. I think just being clear on what should be owning them and being consistent in that moving forward, I think is the bigger challenge there, or the thing to keep more of an eye on. So.
Great, thank you. So I guess next we'll move on to sharing your own case studies. We only have time for one, I believe, because we're getting close to the 4 o'clock mark. So I'd like to invite Florence to tell us about her case study.
Hi everyone. So something cool that we're currently working on is creating a referral program for our customers, where if they fill up a form and want to refer a friend, they get 10% discount, and so does their friend. So this was technically complicated because keeping track of the number of referrals being sent and used was a little difficult to set up. So what we did was we created a score field to keep track of the number of referrals being submitted, and we had a series of multiple campaigns to track attribution, and that's how we made this entire referral program come together without really integrating with third-party solutions.
That's really cool. And it's live now, and it's kind of been doing everything you need it to in terms of tracking and attribution?
We've done a series of tests, but that said, it's not live yet.
Okay. Yeah, the one thing we sometimes run into problems with is attribution and tracking in those types of cases. It sounds like a good solution for where I'm standing, but yeah, definitely, I think kind of getting the content out there is easy, but I think the hardest part is kind of figuring it out when it's coming back to you, right, and where it's coming from and things like that. But yeah, no, it sounds like a really exciting use case, and very online with kind of what we've been discussing today of kind of off-roading examples, cool uses of marketing automation that aren't necessarily the norm or out of the box. So that's awesome. So thank you very much for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was an interesting case study. I'll pass back to Jordan.
Perfect. Yeah. So that's kind of a wrap here. I just wanted to thank everybody for attending. Thank you for indulging my Star Wars reference. It wouldn't be a presentation by me if there wasn't at least one Star Wars reference. So thank you so much for that. I just wanted to emphasize, we love speaking about these things. We love marketing automation strategy, and certainly could spend all day talking about it if given the opportunity. So, if this prompts any ideas, if you guys just want to chat further about what we've been talking about today, if you are curious about sort of behind the scenes of how we built any of these case studies, don't hesitate to reach out. That email info ad goes directly to me. You can get me at the phone number. You can respond to the emails that we sent out the confirmations for this webinar at. As I said, we're all over communication, so we'll definitely get back to you, and would love to hear from you on this. So yeah, and as I mentioned, we've been recording this, so we'll definitely be sending out a recording to the folks, and yeah, please just let us know if we can help with anything. So thanks again for your kind attendance.